Hello everyone, my name is Fotion, and today we're going to look at developing graphical user interfaces applications using Python in Tkinter. The Tkinter package is the standard Python interface to the TK graphical user interface toolkit. What are some definitions in the graphical user interface applications for Python or Java, whatever programming language that can be used? We have window. In general, window refers to a rectangular area somewhere in the user screen. We have top-level windows, which are windows that exist independently in the screen. This can be moved around, can be resized, maximized, minimized, just like this, for example. Can be moved, can be maximized. We have widgets. Widget is the generic term for any building blocks that make up an application in a graphical user interface. We have core widgets, which are containers like frames, panned windows, etc. We have buttons. We have like simple buttons that take the submit buttons that we see on form mostly. We have radio buttons, we have checkboxes, we have menu buttons, we have text as a core widget, like the labels, messages, and the text also. Then we have pop-ups. Pop-ups in Tkinter provides three modules that allow pop-ups dialogues to be displayed. We have tk.message box. They are used for confirmation, information, and showing warnings, errors, etc. We have tk.file dialog. This is second. They are used for single file uploading, multiple file uploading, or selecting a directory, the complete directory. And the third, we have the tk.color chooser. They are used for color picking. We have frames. In Tkinter, the frame is the basic unit of organization for complex layouts. We have a frame is a rectangular area that can contain other widgets. When we create a widget, all the time we are defining a child-parent relationship. For example, when we create a widget, we have to put it inside a frame, and that frame is going to be the parent of this widget, and the widget is going to be the child. Okay, then. Enough with the theory. Let's go to practice and start developing a graphical user interface application using Tkinter. We're going to make a simple hello world application. So in the beginning, we have to import the Tkinter library. Tkinter.import all. First, we have to save the file. We have to create a new file for using Python. Here I'm using Notepad++. You can use whatever IDE you want. Okay, we're going to save as. I've created a folder named Tkinter. We're going to make a hello world.py. And it's going to be a Python file. Okay, let's import Tkinter from Tkinter import. Using this line, this allows us to use everything in Tkinter. In Tkinter, everything is a widget, and we need to put those widgets into a root frame, and this root is going to be root dot is equal to the tk. This is going to be the main window, like as you can see in Notepad++, this is the main window. It can be moved around, as we talked about earlier. This line has to be defined. This has to be the first line defined in our graphical user interface application using Tkinter. Everything else will be executed after that. Now that we have defined the root, let's define the text. Since we're developing a graphical user hello world application using graphical user interfaces, we need to put some text inside. So we're going to use a label. We're going to define a variable, a label, and then the way to create a label is using this label in parentheses. Now, the first argument is going to be the place where we want to put this label, and we want to put it in the root. So the first argument is going to be root. And then it's going to be the text that we want to display inside this label. So text hello world. And that's it. Now we need to position this. We created this label. Now we need to position it. The way in Tkinter we have multiple ways to position a widget, but we're going to use the most simple one, which is pack. Pack means put this pack this widget in the using the minimalistic space and putting it in the middle. And we're going to say it in just a second. Label.pack. Okay. We need to also define another line, and as you have seen in many graphical user interfaces, when you press a button, when you interact with it, it understands that you are doing something. This thing is done because the application is looping all the time, and we have to create that loop. For example, if we are moving the mouse and we click here, the application understands this because it's continually looping, and we have to create this loop by calling root.main loop. So we have successfully first graphical user interface application using Tkinter. I'm going to save the file, and now we're going to run it. To run, I'm going to use the git bash terminal. You can use whatever terminal you want, but I prefer git bash. So we're going to use ls to see the file here, and then Python and hello world.py. And as you can see, the application is run, and the application is running, and the window is created. And you can see it is very small because we have used pack, and pack means, as I said before, put the widget that you want in the using minimalistic space and put it in the middle. So if we maximize it, we can see that the hello world, it will be in the middle of the screen. We can do all sorts of things like the other graphical user interfaces. For example, let's see this folder. We can minimize, we can resize it, we can maximize it, and we can do the same with our application. We can resize, maximize, minimize, and then we can close. Now, if we close, as I said before, the application is always looping. And if we close the application, then the loop will also end. So close and see that we can see that the application is closed. Now that we finished developing our first application, the Hello World application, we can take a look at the buttons. Now, buttons are also widgets. In Tkinter is very simple. We just need to call a button, and then this is how we create a button, calling the button with the constructor. Okay then, but the button also needs some arguments. The place that it needs the place that we will position it. And we want to position it in the root. We need the text that the button will have inside. So we can put submit. Okay, that's it. And we need to also pack this button. So we will put button.pack here and root.main loop. Okay, let's rerun the application. Now, as you can see, we have the button submit displayed in the screen. This button does not do anything in this time because we haven't specified it to do anything. Before we specify the button to actually do something, we can play around with it and restyle this button. Now we can make this button bigger, smaller. Let's make this button bigger. There are two arguments. We have the pad X and the pad Y. These two arguments are used for resizing the button. We can put a number for pad X, 30, and pad Y, 20. As you can see by the name, pad X means resizing in the horizontal way, and pad Y is for vertical. Now, we can save the application, the file. We can close this one and rerun it. Now we can see we have a much bigger button, but still it doesn't do anything. We can make this button unclickable. For example, we can make it disabled. We can make it disabled by using state and then disabled. Save, close the application, and rerun it. Now, as you can see, we cannot click it. This is very useful for forms, for example, but for now, we want it enabled. Before we actually make it do something else, we can show you something like changing the foreground color. For example, we can make the text be blue. We can use the FG attribute and save, rerun the application, and as you can see, the text inside the button now is blue. We can also change the background color. For example, using we can use BG for this thing, and we can make it red or yellow. Let's make it yellow. Let's rerun the application, and as you can see, now we have a yellow button with a blue text inside it. But now let's make this button actually do something. To make this button actually do something, we need to call a function. We need to make this button call a function. And let's define a function using the Python syntax, handle click. We can make something like for every click we can render a new label. So let's create a label as we did in the previous example. We need to place it in the root, and the text is you just click the button. And we need to pack this label. Okay. Now we have defined the new function, and we need to call it whenever the button gets pressed. This is done by the command attribute, and now we can simply say handle click. Now, whenever we will press the button, a new label will be rendered because this is what the function says. Now, let's rerun the application and press the button, and here you can see that we just rendered a new element. Every time we submit the button, we can re-render a new element. We can actually define whatever we want inside the function, but this is a simple example, so we will make a simple task. Okay, now that we talked about buttons, let's have a look at the message boxes. A message box is like a pop-up. It usually has a couple of buttons inside it, like OK, yes, no, cancel. They are their purpose is mostly on informing the user, getting some confirmation from the user, things like this. So first, we're gonna do a Hello World application using message boxes. So when we will click the button, we will have a pop-up that will tell us Hello World. Okay then. So we have the button that we defined in the previous example, and in the function that the button calls, we will define a new message box. But first, we need to import a module. This is from tkinter. Import message box. Okay. Now inside the function, we will call message box dot. We have some examples of message boxes, but we will use the most simple one for this example. We have the show info. Now, a show info basically has a title bar in the top of the top of the pop-up, and inside it it has a text. So first we're going to define the title. We're going to make a title of title. And then as the content we will specify hello world. And this is it. we're going to save it, and then we're going to run it. When we press the submit button, the application shows this pop-up. We have the header, there we have the title here, that we defined title. Okay, sorry. So as you can see, here is title, and when we press it, we have title, and then as the content, we have hello world. Here, because this is a show info message box, we have an eye icon. That means that this message box is used for showing information to the user. And we have an OK button. When we press OK, nothing happens. The message box disappeared, but nothing specifically happens. Okay, now let's have a look at the other message boxes. We have a show warning. What this does. I'm going to rerun the application. And here we have a warning message to us. We can see that it is a warning message because it has a yellow triangle. And when we press OK, it also disappears just like the show info. We also have a show error. Let's rerun the application. And here we can see this is an error message because we have an X in a red background as the icon. Okay, but these three message boxes that we seen just now are only for giving user information. What about interacting with it? What do we use? For example, we want a confirmation from the user. We have three kinds of message boxes for that. We have the ask yes, no. We have ask question and a cancel. Let's look at all of them. For example, ask question. Let's rerun the application. Press the button. We see that we have a new dialog opened, and here the dialog has two buttons, yes and no. Now, whatever we click, nothing will happen because we haven't defined to do anything. So yes, nothing happened, just the pop-up closes, and no, just the pop-up closes. Now, we can actually use what we clicked by defining a variable. For example, let's say response. Initialize response with whatever this ask question returns. And let's put a label in the root. And as a text, we want to show the response. What is this response? And let's pack this label. And let's rerun the application. Now, when we press yes, the application, the pop-up returns yes as a string. When we press no, it returns no. So we can actually use those values. Now we can make an if statement. If response is equal to yes, we will create a label that has the text, you clicked yes. Else, we'll create a label that has the text, you clicked no. Let's save it and let's see what happens. When we press submit and then we press yes, we see that now, based on our if statement, the application renders you clicked yes text. And when we press no, it renders you clicked no. We can also see what the other examples return. For example, we have ask question, ask yes no, sorry, and let's remove this. Add it. Okay. Add the text. We want again to show the response. Let's delete this line. We have it. Let's rerun the application. So ask yes no is the same as ask question, but now when we press yes, the application this message box returns 1, and for no it returns 0. So the same as the example that we made before, we can make an if statement that we can check if the response is 1 or, no, or 0, and then we will do whatever logic that our application really needs. And for ask OK cancel, let's see what this returns. So when we press submit, we have OK and cancel. So when we press cancel, the application returns 0. And when we press OK, then the message box returns 1. So again, we can use these values for to create an if statement and then to make some logic out of it. So if we pressed 1, we will do this thing. If we pressed cancel, we will do this other thing. Okay, then these are the message boxes. Now that we have looked at message boxes, let's have a look at radio buttons. Radio buttons are those rounded buttons that have some text next to it, and they are mostly used in web pages for submitting forms. Now, radio buttons are a little bit trickier than the other widgets. A radio button is a widget, and they are a little bit trickier than the other widgets that we have seen so far. So let's dive right in. Let's delete the previous code, and let's create a radio button. Radio button is created by this line of code. The first argument is going to be the widget that we want to place this radio button in, and it's going to be the root. The second argument is going to be the text, what text we want to put on the side of it, and we want to put, for example, option true. Now, for this radio button, we have to put a value. What value will this radio button have? And this value will be 1. Now, we want to pass this value to a variable, and we can specify this variable here by using variable, and let's name a variable, for example, check variable. Okay, that's it. It's another radio button. For this, we'll use the text option false with the value 0. The variable will be the same. Now let's define this variable. So we have check variable. Now, defining variables in tkinter is a little bit different from Python. We have to use int var because we are using integer values, as we have seen here. For the option true radio button, we have the value 1, and for the option false, we have value 0. If we wanted to use values as string values, for example, 1 as a string and 0 as a string, we would not use int var, but we would use str var, so string variable. But we will use the integers, so we'll replace this with int var. Let's pack this in. Since we haven't defined a variable for radio buttons, we can do the pack here. It's the same thing. Okay, now let's run it. As we can see, we have the 2 radio buttons. At the moment, they don't do anything because we haven't specified the application to do anything with them. So let's use let's use the option that we choose from the radio buttons. Let's create a button like we did before. Button has a root as the first argument. Text will be submit again, and let's specify a function that will be called when this button is pressed. Handle click. Let's define this function. Handle click. Now let's just print as a label what we will choose. So label is equal to a label with the root as the first argument. Text will be check variable, but variables in tkinter are not read just with the name of the variable. We have to use the method get. Now we can read it. Let's pack this label in. Now let's run the application. Sorry, we haven't packed the button. Pack. Let's rerun the application, and we have the button. Now, when we check true and submit it, the application will render 1, since it's the value of the option true. If we choose false, we submit, the application will render 0, since it's the value for the option false. Now, let's use this value in a conditional statement. For example, if I'm thinking of doing some kind of quiz. For example, if we check the true option, then the application will say, congratulations, you have checked the correct answer. And if we check the option false, then the application will give us an error message that says, we're sorry, you checked the wrong option. Okay, so if check variable dot get is equal to 1, we will have, let's create a message box. This will be show info. Title will be quit. Then the text will be congratulations. You have selected the right answer. Let's show an error. In title, and the content will be, we are sorry, you have selected the wrong answer. Okay, let's see what happens. Let's rerun the application. If we click on option true, the application will say, congratulations, you have selected the right answer as an information. If we select the option false, then the application will say, we are sorry, we selected the wrong answer. And this is how you use what option we have chosen from the radio buttons. So that's it for the part 1. We'll see you again in the second part of tkinter.